think through and resolve and find ways to make for more socially responsible innovations. So that you'll see that quote comes from René von Schomburg, who's in the European Commission Research and Innovation Directive. Now, I said it was a product of recent times. That hockey stick, if you want to call it that, shows how responsible innovation has leapt up in prominence. So essentially, before 2010, you hardly see any mentions of responsible innovation if you do a search on Google Scholar or Web of Science. In fact, you basically get one or two, and that's going back to the early 1970s. Something happened around 2010, 2011, and then you get this mushrooming of attention. A lot more articles and a lot more policy talk about responsible innovation. So it's a thing. The UK government has got in on the act, and it commissioned a report by the chief scientist who talks about the need for responsible innovation in terms of the downside of hasty innovations which have subsequent environmental or health impacts. So it's recognised in UK government circles, and it underpins some of the principles of research funding, this idea of responsible innovation in the UK. In the EU, responsible innovation is the underlying principle which guides the 80 billion euros or so that's been spent on research and innovation within Horizon 2020. So, I mean, that's a big thing. Make no mistake. It's a shame I won't be able to get much more of the money soon, but there you are. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens as far as Brexit's concerned. I was hoping to go a whole 15 minutes without mentioning that word, and I just did, Brexit. Done it twice now. Right, now, the EU's approach to responsible research and innovation is written in to the funding calls of Horizon 2020. You can't move for talk of responsible innovation in these calls. I'm involved now on a project which has got responsible innovations stamped all the way through it in terms of the proposal that we had to write, the call we had to address. Responsible innovation is seen as central to the Horizon 2020 programme, and that's central to the Innovation Union of the European Union 2020 strategy. And what they're trying to do with responsible innovation is to address the societal challenges, the grand challenges that I spoke of before, be it climate change, health, mobility, ageing, but also to see this as a way to, quote, smart growth and job creation, so that the EU, as a bloc, can try and compete better with other blocs like the US and Japan. In terms of what it might mean, sort of in day-to-day terms, what people do, one of the words that might be very interesting to this particular group is anticipation. Anticipation, I could imagine, to people working in the insurance sector, might have something to do with the future. When we start talking about the future, I can imagine you start thinking about risk and how to manage it. But in responsible research and innovation, anticipation means something else. It's not about predicting the future. It's about trying to agree what kind of world we would like to live in and where a particular innovation fits into that. So it's more about different groups trying to work out scenarios of the future and where particular innovations might fit into that. So that's what's meant by anticipation. And that kind of anticipation is required, so the argument goes, so that innovations, proposed innovations, respond to societal needs. That's responsiveness. So this all comes about through a process of deliberation and reflection on the part of the collaborating parties. So what responsible innovation is calling for you and us to do is to talk with each other honestly about what kinds of future we want, what kinds of technology can satisfy or bring to life that future, and what needs to be done henceforth in terms of actions, in terms of innovation developments, in terms of regulations, in terms of standards. I don't know, for you it might be in terms of kinds of policies or programs. And this is all to be done with a degree of reflection on the part of those involved in this process. So reflection on your own values and what the world could look like is a fourth dimension of responsible research and innovation. So I've got some questions here for you to do with the implications of this idea of responsible innovation for insurance and insurance practitioners. So the first is whether there's some kind of insurance gap in terms of responsible innovation. I know that in insurance, people talk about insurance gaps. I know there was a case involving Uber a few years ago, and whether a driver who'd knocked down some people was covered by Uber insurance or his own private insurance when he wasn't actually driving or picking up a passenger. So there was a sort of gap between his private car insurance and the Uber insurance. There was an insurance gap. I wonder if there's another kind of gap that's at play in terms of responsible innovation, but it might be more of a kind of, is it a kind of relationship gap? That might be to do with who you habitually work with. Maybe your clients are generally corporates. Maybe you may or may not have much to do with other kinds of organisation, NGOs, patient groups, and so on. I don't really know, but I'm interested to find out whether you do or you would, and whether that would entail quite a different way of thinking or working. Maybe a different way of thinking about who the customer or the client is. If, as responsible innovation has it, the idea is to get more and more likely affected groups involved in the innovation process, then it may be that dealing with the corporate or the firm that's coming up, that's got the patent or launched the first product, maybe that's not the whole show. Maybe there's a network that you might find that you're having to deal with, which kind of blurs the line between what the customer is and what a stakeholder more generally might be. You could be thinking about what this might mean for the approach you take as regards risks and uncertainties, where the technology at stake may be genuinely uncertain, where you really can't put numbers against the possibility or probability of harm or an event occurring. And as I said before, maybe there's something to be thought of in terms of political economy to do with the relationship between private and public entities, and whether that might be changing or need to change in the future. So I'm interested in any thoughts or comments you have. It's a process of sharing. You'll get the slides if you ever want to look up some of the literature that I've been quoting. And if you want to keep in touch with me, then there are some ways you can do that. Okay, so thank you.
London Market Forums, bringing insurance professionals together.